All right, so we are looking for our favorite cartoon theme. Mine is Aesop's Fables. So I've already posted that, so I know what I'm looking for, all the way on the bottom there. And I found a few on Pixabay, and I opened them in new tabs. So when you find something in Pixabay that you like, I'm just going to show you this quick, even though these are all copyright free, so you might have trouble finding what you like. What I recommend is that you right-click on it, and then you open the link in a new tab. Why do I recommend that instead of just clicking on it? It's so you don't ever lose the search results, right? Especially because we're finding multiple examples. So as I do that, it puts them all onto their own tabs. This is what's great about Pixabay. When I go over to download, you can see that every image is at least 1,000 pixels large by its smallest dimension. And that is the requirement we have for the images we can use for this assignment. They need to be at least 1,000 pixels in one dimension. And because I'm logged in, I can actually use the largest, which is 1568 by 2000. But if I'm not logged in, I can actually still use the second to largest, which is still large enough, right? So then I go ahead and hit download. It's going to go to my junk drawer, my downloads folder. And these are under the Pixabay license, which is just a Creative Commons Opens license. So we're allowed to use it for free. We're allowed to use it without having to give any attribution to the author. And we're able to modify or adapt it into new works as we like. So the only things that Pixabay says we're not able to do with this is we cannot sell or distribute the content either in a digital or physical form on a standalone basis. Which means if I take something from them and then I don't change it in any way and then sell it, that goes against their license. And that's in addition to what's called the Creative Commons Opens license. If the content contains any recognizable trademarks, logos, or brands, you cannot use that content for commercial purposes. That's just them covering themselves. And if the content is used in any immoral or illegal way, like child porn, right, then you're not allowed to use that. You cannot use content in a misleading or deceptive way. They're just trying to cover all their legal bases. And you cannot use any of the content as part of a trademark, design mark, trade name, business name, or service mark. So that is because trademarks are a higher standard of clearance than copyright. All right. So what if you can't find what you want in Pixabay? I couldn't find exactly what I wanted. I found some images, but notice they are not line art images, right? So let's now look at just a Google image search. So I'm going to look up Aesop's. And there are millions and millions and millions of images on Google, right? But instead of Google proper, like this, I was checking it out a little bit earlier. And I found for when I'm doing it, it was best to search for vintage line art. Right. When I do the full internet search, it's mostly sites. Right? I want to limit it to just an image search. And then you'll have a lot of sponsored content at the top. Ignore all of that. Trying to sell me the books. But actually ignore all of this for now. Because this is like a junk drawer of any image that has any tag that relates to what my search terms are at all. So how can I filter those? I'm going to use the tools in the Google image search. So now with Google Images, I click on Tools, and I'm going to choose a size that is large. To Google, large means that it's 1,000 pixels or larger in one dimension. So now all of a sudden, all of these are much larger than they would be otherwise. And we need them to be at least 1,000 pixels to be able to be used in this class, because we need to create work that can also be printed, not just shown on screen. The next thing is I'm going to limit it to black and white because I want to find black and white line art, like coloring sheet pages. And then I can even limit it to type, like line drawings. And now those millions of results are going to get filtered down to not so many, like hundreds of results. And there are still going to be some stinkers in there. I don't know why Mickey Mouse shows up. Right? But, or Curious George, or what have you. But now these are all going to be more likely to be useful. There is also a tool for usage rights. Just like Pixabay is always Creative Commons open, I could search for only Creative Commons licensed images. And that might really limit it. Like if you're looking for Garfield, or if you're looking for Peanuts, or if you're looking for Spider-Man, right? But that could be somewhat helpful as well. And that limits it to just these options. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off because we're going to learn the differences between how you use, well, just the concerns of using copyrighted work. So now I'm going to choose some pieces. And just like in Pixabay, I'm going to right click and say open link in new tab. I'm doing that instead of clicking on it and then using this so that I don't lose this page, right? So here's my Google image search. And now in the new tab, I'm going to be able to see them more closely. Almost at 5%, almost plug in. Let's find some others. Now ideally, I want ones that I think are interesting and that are kind of standalone with a good line weight. And what I love about this project, just like Arturo Herrera gets captivated by the line art of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, whatever the cartoon, comic strip, children's book you find, I want you to try to figure out what's unique about that line art, you know, that style of line, so that you can make use of it. Now, I am always opening them in a new tab because sometimes Google lies to you. Because this is all machine learning for the most part, like automatic tags. So now I've opened up several. Some of them force right open to the site itself. But as long as you can get to the actual image, that's a really annoying way. One way you can do that is to right click on the image and say open image in new tab. But you want to make sure you're doing that with the full size image, not with the thumbnail. And then you can actually see the line weight. If it's over 1,000 pixels, it should be bigger than your screen. And then you know it's an image that is high enough resolution for you to use. Ooh, I don't want to go to Chinese Instagram for it. So open image in new tab. So it's a bit of a pain searching for it. That one's just barely big enough. And then once you like them, again, I don't use full screen so that I can do this. Just drag and drop it to your desktop. So Pixabay goes to your downloads folder. Stuff off of Google Images, you can just drag and drop to your desktop. And you're going to see different file formats. This one's what's called a web photo, a WebP format. This is a JPEG. I told you before, JPEGs are the most common. That's a JPEG. Let's see other ones that might be nice. Right click, open, link, and new tab. Then click on that and open image in new tab. And this one lied to me, right? So even though it showed up under large, its actual pixel dimensions are not big enough. It says they are, but if I open image in new tab, it got around it. So you got to find it where it's big enough, where it's actually a little bit bigger than the screen. Don't need that. There we go. Now we need a minimum of 5, but I would find more than that, and then you can be choosy about which ones you use. This one's really nice. And again, The limitation is we cannot make our own pixels. We have to modify from other people's pixels, from what we find. All right. So between that, you'll also want to avoid ones with watermarks, right? Unless you want to spend a lot of time getting rid of those watermarks. So this one looks great, but it's got this big watermark because it's from a stock company. So you always want to check the actual quality of it before we use it. Open image in new tab. And so this one lies in a different way. This one said it was big enough, and it is, but it was upsampled by someone, and so it's a really low quality image. So that's why I say always look at it at full resolution, and then this does not look clean enough to use, right? That's because someone forced it to be much bigger than it originally was, and so it's really noisy. Whereas this one, that's a lot cleaner. But that's not Aesop's Fables, that's from Alice in Wonderland. So you get to be the person who decides, right? And we're just looking for fun line weights to play with. All right, so mostly I'm going to use those filters, which you can also use in Pixabay for black and white, for illustration, for line art, to get these coloring book kind of images. But then I also got the ones from Pixabay, right, that are showing up in my downloads. Like this one, for instance. Now I'm going to use that one just so I can show you how you can take color out of an image and get its line art. But if it's an image that doesn't have any lines in it, if it's just pure painting or purely photographic, then that's not going to be the best to use for this project because we're supposed to jumble together line art. So if you need to get creative about your search terms, like your favorite children's book was Painting with Van Gogh, and you're not going to find a lot of clean line art in Van Gogh. So what you might search is Van Gogh coloring book. And look for the images. Use your tools on your image search to look for large images that are black and white and that are line drawing. And sure enough, they will exist, right? That could work well for this project, which would be a whole lot easier than trying to find black lines in Van Gogh paintings. There's also an AI tool which does not work very well for this. It's through ChatGPT. It's called Coloring Book Hero. And if you sign in and do it, you can type in Aesop's Fables and it will give you some AI ambient garbage kind of image to use. That's usually just black line art. Just using OpenAI and Dolly. But we would treat that AI image just like we would treat any other person's pixels, right? We'd still have to transform it to make it our own. All right. So before we start messing with these in our raster program, we want to organize them. So we want to get our images. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 images. That's a good number to play with. What I'm going to do is open up my master folder and make a new folder. And this is going to be for exercise number 1. And I'm going to describe it, line art jumble. I'm going to plug in my computer. All right. So now I'm also going to mark these. This is my system that keeps me organized. You might want to use it if you like. Something I learned from an art studio I worked for. Exercise 0 is now finished.